Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the second stage. My name is Dr. Loma Ahmed. I will be with you at a histology. And today we're starting our class with the integument. And when we're saying the integument, we mean it's composed of the skin and its appendages like sweaty glands, sebaceous glands, hair and nails. So, when we're coming at the skin, we can divide the skin histologically into three main layers or three main zones, as we see, into the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. At the epidermis, it's constituting from a specific type of epithelium, stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. Stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. And these epithelium are constituting a four type of cells, starting from keratinocyte, melanocyte, langerhans cell, and Merkel cells. We're starting with the largest population. It's a keratinocyte that's distributed and arranged along these 5 layers. Okay. Also, the other 3 type of cells, Merkel, langerhans, and melanocytes, also distributed along these 5 zones, but in a specific positions. And because of the stratum basale, at the stratum basale, it's responsible for the renewal of the cells, because it's a sloughed when it's reached at the stratum corneum. So at the stratum basale, it's responsible for the continuously renewal and making a new cells until reached to the stratum corneum. Now we're coming at this figure, show us the main layers of the skin, starting with the epidermis, superficial, with its specific epithelium, and deep dermis, and more deep than its hypodermis, or sometimes it's called subcutaneous. Okay, at the epidermis, the 5 zones that's constituting the keratinocyte, starting from the innermost to the outermost, started by stratum basale. Stratum basale. Above it, it's a stratum spinosum. Above it, it's stratum granulosum. Above it's a stratum lucidum. And this type of, or this zone, it's located only at a thick cell, a thick skin, like the palm and soles. At the outermost is stratum corneum, or it's called the dead keratinized cell. Now we're talking in details about each one of these zones. Starting with the renewal layer that's responsible for the renewal of these cells. It's stratum basale, or called stratum germinativum. It's a deepest layer of the epidermis supported by a plasma membrane. So when we're looking at this figure, it's supported by basement membrane and rested on a dermis. Okay? Okay. Forming the irregular interference between the epidermis and dermis. Okay? So it's this layer, it's making the strongly interference between the epidermis and dermis by these are the papillae. Okay, these are called a papillae, like this and this and this. These called dermal papillae, and these are epidermal papillae. Okay. Stratum basale constitutes a single layer of mitotical active cuboidal to low columnar cells. So these are a single layer of low columnar to cuboidal mitotic active. Okay? At this figure, we can see the mitotic active inside the nucleus of these cells, of these flattened cells, cuboidal to low columnar, like this and this. Okay. Its cytoplasm is a basophilic, okay, and have a large nucleus. And the interference between these cells and make a supportive between these attachment cells, it's occurring by a structure called a desmosome. A desmosome that make a bond between these attachment cells. Also, it's make attachment between the stratum basale to the above stratum spinosum. Okay. While at the basal attachment of these cells to the basal membrane, it's attached by a structure, it's called hemidesmosome. So, between the attachment of these together cells and to the spinosome, it's called desmosome, while the attachment to the basal membrane, it's called hemidesmosome. Also, at the cytoplasm of this keratinocytes of this layer, containing a numerous bundle and single intermediate filament, or called tonofilament. So, at this part, it's not be cleared. This tonofilament containing a keratin type 5 and keratin 14. And previously we explained that the mitotic figures should be common in the stratum basale because this layer is responsible for the cell renewal. And the mitosis occurs mostly during the night, and the specimens are produced during the day. And when the new cells are formed via mitosis, a previous layer of the cells pushed toward the next layer of the spinosum, stratum spinosum, and the melanocyte Merkel cells also distributed among these keratinocytes, like this. Okay, Merkel cells and melanocytes Later we talking about those two cells in details. We continue with the second part or second layer. It's called stratum spinosum. That is considered a thickest layer of epidermis composed from polyhedral. These cells of this layer it's called polyhedral to flattened cells. Also basally located keratinocytes, and also it's mitotically active. So these two, stratum basale and stratum spinosum, together it's called Malpighian layer because it's responsible for the turnover the epidermal keratinocytes. And the cells are richer in the thin bundles of intermediate keratin filament other than the stratum basale. And the tonofilament bundles radiate outward from the perinuclear region toward a highly interdigitated the cellular processes which attached adjacent cells to each other by desmosomes. These processes is called intercellular bridges, give cells the stratum spinosum a prickle cells appearance. So the stratum spinosum name is related to this projection from these cells. And when the keratinocytes move toward the superficial through the stratum spinosum, they continue to produce a tonofilament, which become enveloped by keratohyalin, and combination to keratohyalin to the tonofilament make a groups of a thick bundle called tonofibrils. So the cytoplasm of this type of cells are containing both a type called its keratohyalin and tonofilament, and when it's unite between them or make combination between them, that's making a structure called a tonofibrils. Also the cytoplasm containing a secretory granules called lamellar bodies. It's considered a house of lipid substances that's composing a phospholipids. It's arranged in a closely packed, and some granules are released these content into the extracellular space, as we see between the extracellular spaces. And these are forming a boundary that's impermeable to the aqueous substances. The third, above the stratum spinosum, it's stratum granulosum, that's containing from 3 to 5 layers of flattened keratinocytes. Also, it's more superficial layer of epidermis. Until this time, these cells are still having a nucleus, and the cytoplasm containing the irregular shaped basophilic keratohyalin granules. Also, a bundles of keratin filament pass through these granules. So we name it stratum granulosum because of these granules. And these granules also release exocytosis into the extracellular spaces, and forming a sheets of lipids that rich substances act as a waterproof. And this waterproof very important for make a moisture to the surface skin, continuously moisturizing the surface skin. And the organelles are self-destructed at this time, and the cells are filled with the keratohyalin embedded in keratin tonofibrils complex. After that, we coming at the more superficial, it's stratum lucidum. At the stratum lucidum, clear homogeneous, lightly stained and thin layer of cells, immediately superficial to the stratum granulosum. Previously we talking it's present only at the thick skin, like at the palm and soles, and it's flattened cells. These flattened cells are characterized its lack of nucleus and lack of organelles. Okay, and filled with densely packed keratohyalin embedded in keratin tonofibril complex. The last superficial layer is stratum corneum. It's composed of a numerous layer of a flattened keratinized cell and thick plasma lemma. Also, its lack of a nucleus and organelles, filled with keratohyalin embedded to the keratin filaments, and the skin surface is display a desmosome, tight junction called squamous or horny cells. So its cells, it's called a horny cells or squamous. And the extracellular of the stratum corneum embedded in lipid materials. That's combination of lipid coat and cornified cells that envelop together and forming a very strong impermeable barrier known compound cornified cell envelope. The outermost squamous lost their contact with each other and become desquamated and slough off. After that, it's return to the stratum basale and renewal it until reach through these 5 zones. Now we coming to the other 3 type of cells, like Langerhans cells. At the Langerhans cells, which is antigen, consider the antigen presenting cells. Also, it's located among the stratum spinosum. Okay, at the stratum spinosum, between them. Langerhans cells, thought it's to be derived from the neural crest and originated from the precursor of the bone marrow. Okay, and it's a part of mononuclear phagocyte system. So they continuously replaced by precursor cells and leaving to the bloodstream to migrate until reach to the epidermis and differentiate into the Langerhans cells. And these cells function in the immune response and have a or the cell surface FC antibodies. So this function of these type of cells, it's as immune response or defense mechanism against any foreign bodies. Merkel cells, these are Merkel cells. These type of cells, it's distributed among the keratinocytes of the stratum basale. Okay, distributed through the keratinocytes of the stratum basale. its function ما أريد أدخل لكم إياها بعمق, just enough to know its function is as a mechanoreceptors. Okay, it's a mechanoreceptors. The most important type of cells, it's a melanocyte. At a melanocyte, which is also it's derived from the neural crest cells, it's responsible for the melanin pigmentation that gave the skin the brown coloration. Okay, and these melanocytes is started from the melanoblasts and make a differentiate until reach to be a pre-melanocyte. After that, it's also a very or a continuous differentiation until reach to be a melanocyte. And these melanocytes forming the process, okay, these processes, and these are a melanocyte. Making a processes, it's called a dendrites. Okay, a dendrites. And these melanocytes make the tyrosinase produced by the rough endoplasmic reticulum of the melanocytes. It's packaged to the Golgi apparatus into the oval granules known as melanosomes. So these melanocytes are making a structure, it's called a melanosomes. And after a many of interference and many factors interference until reach to forming a melanin. Okay, until reach forming a melanin. With the melanin with a melanosomes that's contained, the melanin are transformed and increased in quantity to be a mature melanosomes. Okay, and also it's transformed to a microtubules into the melanocytic dendrites to be released into the extracellular spaces. So these are the microtubules that transport the melanosomes or melanin with the melanosomes until reach to the dendrites that are in contact with the keratinocyte or extracellular spaces. And this accumulation of these melanosomes with the melanin that accumulate around the nucleus when the sun's ultraviolet radiation strikes the skin, this manner shielding the keratinocytes chromosomes, that's making a radiation-induced injury. So it's protect the skin from the carcinogenic by making a cap of the chromosomes and the nucleus by these melanosomes and melanin. Okay? After that, the melanin pigment it's attacked and degraded by lysosomes. That's lysosomes are located between the keratinocytes. So the processes occur over a period of several days. So we see when at a people that's it's having the exposure to the sun to make a dark coloration to its skin, to them skin, sorry. When it's leave the skin or the sunlight, after a few days, its return to its normal skin coloration. So here I would ask you a question. What is your opinion about the differences between the races? I mean the pale and dark-skinned people. These differences is related to increase of number of the melanocytes or the melanin released. I still waiting your answers when I meet you. Okay? Okay, we coming at the second part of the skin layers. It's dermis. Okay, thickest, deepest dermis. Also, it's divided or subdivision into two main layers. The superficial layer, it's called papillary layer according to this papillae, and the deepest, it's called reticular layer. Okay, and at this part, it's accumulation of adipose tissue. It's a hypodermis. Okay, at the papillary layer of the dermis, it's considered the superficial layer, and it's interdigitate with the epidermis. Okay, as we see by these papillae. Okay, or these papillae, and the entrance of or from the dermis to the epidermis is called dermal papillae, while the epidermis to the dermis is called the epidermal papillae. This papillary layer containing loose connective tissue who has a thin type of type 3 collagen fibers and cylinder elastic fibers arranged in loose networks that's anchoring in fibrils. Also, it's extended from the basal lamina of the papillary layer and binding to the epidermis to the dermis. Also containing fibroblast, macrophage, plasma cell, mast cell. Also, it possesses many of capillary loops which extended to the epidermis, dermis interference. These capillaries that regulate the body temperature and nourish the cells of the vascular epidermis, and located in some dermal papillae, pear-shaped encapsulated, called mesenteric corpuscle. These mesenteric corpuscle, it's act as a mechanoreceptor specialized to the respond a slight deformation of the epidermis. Reticular layer. These are the interference between the papillary layer and reticular layer of the dermis. It's not be cleared even at the microscope because there is a strongly interference between them. Okay, and the characteristic feature of this layer, it's composed a dense irregular collagenous connective tissue, also type 1 collagen fiber, also thick elastic fiber, and abundance of the sebaceous and sweaty glands that distributed along these reticular fibers or reticular layer, also including fibroblast, mast cell, lymphocyte, and many of macrophages, fat cell, and the deeper aspect of this reticular layer. And the sweaty glands, sebaceous glands, and hair follicle all derived from the epidermis, but invaded the dermis and hypodermis. Also, we can see a group of smooth muscles that's located in deeper region of the reticular layer at a particular sites, like skin of penis, scrotum, and areola around the nipple. Okay? Other type of smooth muscle we can find at this reticular layer, it's called a rectal pili muscle. A rectal pili muscle. These are located near the hair follicle. Okay? And this muscle, it's responsible when the hair of the body, okay, it's cold or suddenly exposed to a cold environment, it's given the skin like a gauze bumps. يعني شلون احنا بالعامية نقول عليها جلد مكزبر. Okay, these type of smooth muscles, it's responsible for this name a gauze bumps. Also, we have many of mechanoreceptors encapsulated at the reticular layer, and these encapsulated mechanoreceptors like Pacinian corpuscle, which is respond to the pressure and vibration. Number 2, it's called a Ruffini corpuscle, which respond for the tensile force. Number 3, it's called the Krause end bulb. Krause end bulb, whose function it's until it's unknown. Okay, now we're coming at the glands of the skin. That's including sweaty glands, sebaceous glands, and mammary glands. The mammary, we take it about when we taking the reproductive system, inshallah, at the last lectures. Now we taking only the sebaceous glands and the sweaty glands. At the sweaty glands, we have a two type of sweaty glands. It's eccrine and apocrine. Okay, eccrine and apocrine. I continue to the next video by to talking about the sweaty glands. Okay, at the sweaty glands, as we see this accumulation of sweaty glands located at the reticular layer of the dermis. Okay, we have a two type of sweaty glands, eccrine and apocrine sweaty glands. At the eccrine, which located at the skin throughout most of the body. Okay, and these glands, it's important organ for the thermoregulation. Eccrine sweaty glands are a simple coiled tubular glands, okay, located deep the dermis or underlying the hypodermis. So we can locate the sweaty glands at the dermis, reticular dermis, also at the hypodermis. تمام. Okay, and it's passing from the secretory portion of each gland. It's a cylinder coil duct, okay, that transfers the dermis and epidermis to open at the surface of the skin and pour the sweat. Okay, we have two units that's composing the sweaty glands. It's a secretory portion and ductal part, like this at this slide. Okay, these are a two type, eccrine and apocrine. Sweaty glands. Okay, these are constituting the secretory part or secretory portion. At the secretory portion, it's said to be a simple cuboidal to low columnar epithelium and composing of two types of cells, dark cell, these are surrounded this secretory portion, dark cell and the clear cell. So it's cuboidal to low columnar epithelium lined and having and surrounded by two types of cells. It's a dark cell according to its secretion because it's a viscous or mucoid cells and mucus secretion, while the clear cells according to its watery secretion, and it's containing a secretory granules. It's a watery secretion. Also surrounded these two secretory portion, it's surrounding by a type of cells. It's called myoepithelial cells. Myoepithelial cells. So it's a smooth muscles. Okay, surrounding the secretory portion of the eccrine sweaty glands and enveloped by the basal lamina of this secretory portion. So this myoepithelium, what's the importance of presence of this myoepithelium? While it's contract or the contraction of these muscles that make push and the transport of the content to the ductal part, okay, until reach to the target place and pour the sweat toward the surface. Okay, the ductal part, it's continuous with the secretory portion. Okay, it's narrow and passes through the dermis and its way to the epidermis surface. It's stratified cuboidal epithelium made up of two layers. These two layers are cells of the basal layer and cells of the laminar or luminal layer. So it's continuous with the secretory portion and it's narrow, constituting two layers, cells of the basal layer and cells of the luminar layer, and it's lined by stratified cuboidal epithelium. The duct of the eccrine gland are reached to the surface, so the sweat are poured to the skin surface, and its nature of secretion, it's a watery secretion. Okay, type 2 of the sweaty glands, it's apocrine Okay, these are the apocrine. It's at opposite of the eccrine because it's opening not at the skin surface, it's opening beneath or near the hair follicle. Okay, it's a viscous secretion, not a watery secretion. So this eccrine watery secretion opening at the skin surface, and apocrine, it's a viscous secretion open near the hair follicle. Now we're coming at the sebaceous glands, except the palm and the sole, because absent of the hair. The sebaceous glands are distributed along all the bodies, and it's beneath and it's opening to the hair follicle. When we find a hair and hair shaft, we are located at sebaceous glands. Okay, that's embedded into the dermis and hypodermis also. These glands, it's most abundant in a face, okay, and scalp and forehead. And the secretory product of the sebaceous glands is a sebum. It's like a waxy to oily mixture with cholesterol and triglycerides, and the secretory cellular debris. And the sebum is believed that to facilitate the maintenance of the proper skin texture and the hair flexibility. Also, the sebum is antimicrobial and assists to preventing the watery fluid from the entering or leaving the skin. So also it's assists to be a moisture and loosening, and it's dry. Similar to the sweaty glands, also the sebaceous glands have a secretory portion and the ductal part. The ductal part of the sebaceous gland open into the upper third of the follicular canal, where they discharges their secretory product into the coat, the hair shaft, and the ducts of the sebaceous glands in certain regions of the bodies lacking hair follicle, like lip, glans penis, and areola of the nipple. At this state, it's open onto the surface of the skin and empty their secretion. Sebaceous glands are alveolar with the cluster of acini opening to a single short ducts. Each acinus is composed from peripherally located small basal cells that's resting on a basal lamina, as we see at this figure. Okay, it's accumulation of the acinus that's resting on the single basement membrane that's open at a short duct, as we see, and it's open, it's discharged to the hair follicle. And also this ductal part are lined by stratified squamous epithelium, as usual. The last part of our lecture is composing the hair and the nails. At the hair, which composing from the hair follicle, which is the organs from which the hair developed and arise from the invagination of the epidermis that's embedded to the dermis and hypodermis, or both. These hair follicles are surrounded by dense accumulations of fibrous connective tissue that's belonging to the dermis. And it's composing a thick ends basement membrane and the glassy membrane that separated the dermis from the epidermis from the epithelium of the hair follicle. And it's expanded the terminus of the hair follicle to the hair roots. So this part, it's represented the hair root, and also it's separated from the dermal papillae. So the hair root and the dermal papillae, both of them, it's represented as a structure. It's called a hair pulp. Okay, and the dermal papillae containing, or it's a site of rich supply of the capillaries that's providing the nutrients and oxygen for the cells of the hair follicle. And the bulk of the cells that's composing the hair root, it's called matrix. So this site, it's of a matrix. These sides of the matrix. Okay, and these matrix are represented by stem cells. That's its proliferation of these matrix arising stem cells and account for growth of the hair. These stem cells are homologous to the stratum basale of the epidermis, and the stem cells are present even in the bald individuals. But the hair follicle cells produced prostaglandin D2, which act through the G protein coupled receptors, and these receptors prevent the stem cells from entering the cell cycle to forming a new hair follicle. The outer layers of the follicular epithelium forming the external root sheath. Okay, all these are the glassy membrane, and after that coming the external or outer, called outer root sheath. Okay, which is composed from single layer of cells at the hair pulp. Okay, as we see in clearly, a single layers at the hair pulp and several layers near the surface of the skin. شوف هنا بدأت عندنا صار بها thickness near the skin. Okay, the external root sheath surrounded a several layer of the epidermally derived cells. After that coming the innermost, its internal root sheath or inner root sheath, the same meaning. The internal root sheath are composing from outer single row of the cuboidal cell. It's called Henle layer, which contact the innermost layer of the cells of the external root sheath. Number 2, it's called Huxley layer. Huxley layer. It's also a layer of flattened cells that's forming a Huxley layer. Number 3 is called a cuticle of the internal root sheath. Cuticle of the internal root sheath. That's formed by the overlapping the scale-like cells with free ends projection toward the base of the hair follicle. While the hair shaft, here are the hair shaft, it's composing from a long cylinder filament that extended through the surface of the epidermis, as we see, and it's composing from medulla. All these are the medulla, and cortex, and from outside it's called the cuticle of the hair. Among the matrix of the papillae, dermal papillae and the root or the hair pulp, there is a large amount of the melanocytes with a long dendrites processes that transfer the melanocyte or melanosomes to the cells of the cortex. Okay, to the cells of the cortex, to the hair shaft. And the melanosomes remains in their cells, that's imparting to the hair a color based on the amount of the melanin present. With age, the melanocytes gradually lose their ability to produce the tyrosinase, previously explained it, which is essential for the production of the melanin. So the production of this enzyme and enzyme catalase is diminished, which increase the hydrogen peroxidase level in these cells. So it's bleaching the hair, and it's transformed to be or turning to be a gray in hair. And I can show you another picture. It's a histological section of the hair. These are the hair follicle and extended to be a hair shaft and penetrated through the skin surface. Okay, we coming to the nail. These are a figure to the nail. It's located on the distal phalanx of each finger and toes, and composed of plates of heavily compacted, highly keratinized epithelial cells that form the nail plates. Okay, these are the nail plates that's resting on the structure. It's called a nail pad. It's the epidermis. The nail developed from the cells of the nail matrix that's proliferate and become keratinized. The nail matrix, a region of the nail root, it's located beneath the proximal nail fold. So these are the nail matrix at this part from the root of the nail. Okay, and the stratum corneum of the proximal nail fold, it's forming a structure. It's called eponchium. While at the top of this internal to this nail, it's called hyponchium. Okay, as we see at this figure, these are a cuticle or called eponchium at the fold, looking at the fold or at the root of the nail, and from the internal it's called hyponychium. And these are the nail body that's resting on the nail bed. And this part اللي احنا نشوفها مثل الهلال أو القطعة تكون دائما بداية النيل، هذه احنا نسميها اللانيولا. اللانيولا which is a white crescent. It's observed at the proximal end of the nail. Okay. And these are represented the nail. And these are the phalanx finger bone. And until this minute, I finish my lecture. And thank you very much for your attention.